am Ginger Frank, and I am the founder and owner of Poppy Handcrafted Popcorn.
So Ginger, tell us a little bit about how you got into business in the first place.
So this is always like the tricky part of answering this question, because I feel like people always want the answer to be that I was this popcorn wizard, whipping up batches of popcorn in my garage for all the neighborhood children, which is not true at all. I was recently divorced, and I had young kids, and I had a job that I really loved, but I was working all the time without a ton of flexibility in my schedule. So I felt like I was like juggling my kids around all the time and working on weekends. And as we all know, Asheville is a tough market to find a job in. So I decided that I was going to make my own job, just kind of out of necessity. Of course, that was like naive thinking that I would work less and have more control over my schedule if I owned my own business. That's, in hindsight, comical, but yeah. So popcorn has always been a love of mine, but really my background and what I'm good at is like branding, merchandising, things like that. So I always say I kind of stumbled into popcorn, and popcorn is like the vehicle that I'm using to accomplish what I want to accomplish, rather than people were beating down my door for my secret popcorn recipes.
So it wasn't about the product. You have a great product.
Yeah.
But you wanted some flexibility. You wanted a little bit more freedom, to raise your kids and to be available. And you had a great background in marketing and merchandising and branding. So I could see the intersection of how all that's worked. And so how has it worked?
It's worked pretty darn good. Our growth has been incredible. I opened in 2014 with the little popcorn shop on Merriman Avenue. And that was really my ambition. Was I'm going to, Asheville's a foodie city, and we kind of have, for a small town, we have everything here, but we didn't have a popcorn shop. So I thought I was just going to add to that, and I would come in and make popcorn and sell it and go pick up my kids after school, and that would be that. And yeah, that didn't last for long. So we opened in October, which was a great time to open anything in retail going into the holiday season. So we had a pretty great holiday. And then really soon after the holiday, people started calling saying that they had received popcorn as a gift, or they were in Asheville and got popcorn, and how can they get popcorn, and they'd like to sell it in their store. And those were all things that I had no idea how to make happen. So, I worked on it for about almost a year, trying to figure out how to package popcorn properly for it to be shelf stable, and like how to enter that whole like kind of wholesale market. And when I figured that out, that's when things really took off. And, now almost 7 years later, we have popcorn in over like 2,000 stores across the country, and we ship all over the country. We've got stores in Canada that sell it, and our wholesale business is now like 80% of our business, versus the retail is about 20% of our business. So the model has completely changed, and just, we've just kind of followed what's been coming towards us. But it isn't anything that I envisioned in the beginning. So, I think one of the biggest things I've learned is flexibility. Like, you have to be willing to like pivot and learn what people want, and not just be super rigid as to what you thought it would be, to be successful.
So there's two ways to look at building a business. One is to kind of build it to what you need.
Right.
And the other is to build it to what the market is asking for.
Right.
And it sounds like to me, you started out with building what you needed, and then you quickly pivoted and said, well, hang on, the market's asking for more. I'm a marketing person. Let's respond to the market and see what happens. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. And I also tried my best along the way to combine both of those things, because I still, it was still really important to me to have the time with my kids and, be able to go on a school field trip or things like that. So, I learned very early on that while I wasn't necessarily leaving work every day at 3 o'clock to pick my kids up from school and then going on with the rest of my life for the day, I would leave at 3 o'clock to get my kids, and then I'd bring them back to the store and they'd have to sit there while I was working, and then I would go home and do homework and make dinner. And then when they were asleep, I would get back on the computer and do my work. So, there was I always felt like I couldn't keep up, and I worked a lot. I got a lot less sleep than I really wanted to, but I was able to also do the things that I wanted to do with my kids. So, as Poppy was growing, I still tried to, as much as I possibly could, stay true to the reason why I started it.
So talk a little bit about that. I mean, I found that in working with clients that if we have some good solid boundaries, in a lot of ways it makes it easier. So if I've had clients before that said, hey, I want to pick up my kid every day at 3 from school. Great, that's a boundary. Okay, you can do what you did and bring them back, or you can go home. It's up to you. How is that sort of shown up?
There's definitely been times that it's been difficult, and I'm sure if you asked my kids, they would say Poppy was my focus. When they were little, they would cry and be like, we don't want to go to the popcorn shop again. I was like, kids, get in the car. Like, we're going to the popcorn shop. Because they have no concept at that age. Mine were like 7 and 9 when I opened Poppy. So they were really young. But to me, I wasn't dropping them off at school at 8 o'clock in the morning and not seeing them until 7 o'clock at night. So even though I still had to work, I loved being able to know that at 3 o'clock, like, we were at least in the same building. We were at least in the same space. And if they wanted to come in and ask me something, or they needed help with homework, I could do that while I was doing my job. So it wasn't perfect by any means, but it was still better than the alternative to me. So I just, I did what I could to make that work. Now, of course, they're older, and Poppy's older. It requires my attention in a different way. So I have a lot more flexibility now than I used to, because I'm not the only one making popcorn or bagging popcorn or selling popcorn. So, it didn't start out exactly the way that I wanted it to for what I was trying to accomplish, but I've gotten there now. Like, now, because of the work that I put in the early, years, now I can pick my kids up at 3 o'clock and not go back to work if that's what I want to do. Or I can go to a baseball game or a dance recital, or, any of those things, without having to pay for it by staying up all night getting my work done. So it's, now I can say it's exactly what I always wanted for myself, but it took a long time to get here.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a misconception that you can. I think most people that go into business go into it kind of for the reason you did. There's either two reasons. One, they want more freedom. Their boss is a idiot, or they get laid off. But that's sort of the three reasons I see. But I think people underestimate the amount of work it takes to get to a point where you get some freedom or get some flexibility in the business. So
yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the time it took and maybe a little bit of the process. I love the fact that you kept the focus of why you went into business in the first place at the forefront all the time. And then you adjusted the way, sort of your view of the way you had to do that to be true to that vision.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's always difficult because I think as a parent, you're kind of splitting your time between your business, which is like your livelihood. You can't pay the bills without it, and your kids, who are the most important thing to you. So when you're splitting that time, you always kind of feel like neither one of those things are really truly getting the attention that you want to give it. And so you kind of have this like frustration and this guilt, and if only I could do this. And it's hard, I think, in the beginning to work through that and not feel like you're totally failing at both things that you're trying to accomplish, because you can't 100% focus on this and you can't 100% focus on this. So I think especially as a parent, especially as a mom, like that's something that's you have to kind of work through. And, I think what I learned really early on is, it doesn't have to be perfect to be good. If I knew then what I know now about opening a business and running a popcorn business that I knew nothing about, like I could do things so differently. But you're in the process of this huge learning curve, and you're like, it's like just kind of banging your head against the wall a little bit. You're like, you're trying so hard, but you don't necessarily know what you're doing because you've never done it before. And so, there's many times where you feel like, okay, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, or this isn't, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know enough of what I'm doing to like keep up with this and keep up with my kids. And I think you have to like really like allow yourself a lot of grace, because, if perfection is what you're seeking, like you're not going to get it. And if that's your goal, or your measure of success, like you're going to have a really hard time, feeling good about your days, because it definitely doesn't feel that way in the beginning. People would see people buying popcorn, or eventually they'd see popcorn on the shelves of other stores. And, you can just tell the comments from like your friends or people in the community. They're like, oh my gosh, like you're killing it. I see you everywhere, and really you just feel like, no, actually I'm just killing me. I don't know. I'm not killing anything other than myself, I think,
Yeah.
Because in that stage of growth, like every dime that you make, you have to put into growing. And so, I was like, I never thought I'd feel so poor and so tired. And gosh, I miss my old job. I mean, there were lots of times I felt that way, but, I just kept going because I still had faith in the end goal.
Well, grace and faith, those are two big things. One of my mentors has a saying, done is better than perfect.
Right.
And in business, a lot of that applies. There's some things that you want to be perfect, but in a lot of the things in business, getting it done is way more important than doing it exactly perfect. You are going to run yourself crazy if you're trying to be perfect all the time. Well, I mean, this is awesome. So what kind of changes have you had to make in sort of your positioning of yourself in the business along the way?
I mean, a lot. I feel like there was a time when I felt like, okay, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, as we were growing and adding staff, and I always felt like, I'm the only person in this that has done every job that's here, that knows how to do, if somebody's out, like I can fill in and make popcorn. If somebody's out, I can fill in and bag popcorn. I can get on the phone and call whoever. I can go to a trade show. Like I'm the only one that's kind of done all of these things. And, as we've grown, that's no longer the case. It's interesting to see that there's areas of the business that, while I know about it, I've not actually done it, because we've kind of grown to a point where I now don't do everything, and we have a team, and, being able to like trust that team and rely on that team, becomes super important, because you're not, I find myself walking around going, oh, how do I do this, to people that are doing those jobs that I've not actually done. And so it's kind of like this you kind of transition to a point where you can't do everything, and trying to do everything isn't beneficial for anyone. So I think like creating a team that you really believe in, and you feel that they know your vision and they know what you're trying to accomplish, and they're along for that ride with you, is huge. So for me, that kind of started with, I think it was 3 years ago. Josh Dorfman was running Venture Asheville,
Yep.
and he reached out to me. I didn't have any idea what Venture Asheville was. You know, I kind of was in a bubble of just surviving in the popcorn world and being a mom, and I kind of was clueless as to what else was going on in the world at that time. He reached out to me about Venture Asheville, and I was definitely immediately interested because I felt so overwhelmed and so tired at that time. So I joined Venture Asheville, and I got 4 amazing mentors, and it definitely changed my life. It changed Poppy's life, and I definitely feel like Poppy wouldn't be where it is. I wouldn't be where I am without those 4 people. So I think, you know, it's important along the way to know what you know, but to know what you don't know, and to be okay not knowing, and being willing to like let other people kind of come into your world and, you know, offer advice and help you along the way. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things for people who start their own business, because it's, you know, you kind of feel like it's like dropping your kid off at the babysitter. Like they're gonna do a fine job, but they're not gonna do the job that you would do. And so it's hard to not feel that way with your business. But for me, I think they got me at a time that I was so exhausted that I was just so willing for help. And, you know, I just kind of went into that program super humbly, like, this is growing like crazy. I don't know how to keep up with this. I want to, but I don't know how, and I need some help. And that kind of changed everything, you know?
Yeah. Great program. Great
Yeah.
program, by the way. It's a little bit counterintuitive for a lot of people. They go into business because they're independent, or maybe they, you know, didn't like, and so we think we know what we're doing. And I think one of the bigger mistakes I made in my life was not asking for help quick enough in some of my businesses. So it's a bit of a myth that you can do this stuff by yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah, is what I see. So how many employees are we up to now? We started with 1, and now we're up to.
Right now we have 30. And then, you know, each year going into the holiday season, for us, holidays are
Sure.
huge, obviously.
Yep.
And our holiday season keeps starting earlier and earlier to be able to produce and package enough popcorn for what we sell during the holiday season. So, you know, for us, we're technically about to go into holiday next month.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So then we hire we'll probably hire at least 15 to help us get through the holiday season. And then typically holiday is really, you know, it's like a whole new introduction for a lot of people to our popcorn. And we always seem to, at the end of that season, keep a couple of those holiday people that, you know, it's this really great trial and error interview, basically.
Right.
It's a great way to find employees because they're in there and they're working, and you get to see how they are for several months, and then see if it's a good fit for you and for them. And so we've gotten our best employees by, you know, keeping holiday help on. So that will happen soon, which is, you know, a whole nother ball game right now because it's so difficult to hire people at the moment. But yeah, so that's kind of, we'll get up to probably about 45 staff during the holidays. And then I would say we'll probably retain 5 of those people, maybe. Just, we keep trying to predict it. I keep trying to predict it. And then the growth is just crazy. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, we've doubled our staff again. So kind of feels like each year we've kind of doubled our staff. we're getting to the point where I don't know that we'll double our staff next year, but you know, our growth is we're up over 100% from last year's numbers, which last year's numbers, even during the pandemic, were up 36% from the previous year. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of this super unpredictable, crazy gift that keeps landing in our lap, and we're trying to wrangle it the best we can.
Well, you're responding to the market in a way. I mean, the popcorn is amazing, y'all. If you haven't tried it, you got to get some. I mean, it is. I mean, it is the kind of thing that you get a bag of that thing, you can't put it down. I mean, it's super good. Yeah. So, yeah, it's amazing. So have you gotten to the point now, do you have employees that you didn't know, like they were just there and you walked in one day and somebody else had hired them? Have you gotten to that point yet?
Yeah. Actually, yesterday I walked into the production facility and there were 3 people in there that I had never seen before. And it happens a lot during the holidays when we hire holiday help.
Sure.
So a lot of times during the holidays, kind of closer to like November, it kind of becomes like all hands on deck. Like all of us like that are kind of like management or office staff, we all end up at the production facility just trying to fill orders, and we're all in the same space kind of for the only time during the year. And you know, I remember like last year, there were several times that people that I didn't know, they were hired as holiday help. You know, they thought I was like a new hire. They're like, oh, are you new? And I was like, I always respond, no, I work in the office. Because I don't want them to feel silly when I go, well, no, actually, I'm your boss. So I always just say, yeah, I work in the office. But yeah, just in the last year, that's happened so many times. And that's kind of a strange feeling, because in the beginning, we're like such a tight group, you know, it's more of like a peer relationship than a owner-employee relationship. Like you're just all in it together, you know? And then when you start to walk into the building and not know people in there working, you're like, it feels different. And that's one thing that I struggle with. Like, you know, and it's one thing that my mentors helped me with. They're like, you can't be best friends with everybody that's in here working. And, you know, in the beginning, it's very much your family, and then it kind of transitions into a business. And that's kind of been a tough transition for me, because the personal part of it is huge for me.
Yeah, I had a friend who he started a business out of his garage. It's, you know, about 100 employees now, and he told me, so my wife and I started this business and we wanted it to treat the employees like family, and then we realized families were dysfunctional.
Right.
And so they realized, hey, hang on, we got to do this. We got to really look at this a little differently. And so I've always laughed at that idea. And I get it. You can't be best friends with everybody that you work with. It's just not possible. There's too many. It's a different relationship as an owner, or it's a bit lonely actually, because you're on an island a bit as an owner.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that in the last year or so, you know, especially as we were talking earlier, that I now don't know everybody when I walk in the building. There's definitely parts of the business that I don't have hands-on experience with. You know, I can walk in and see that I have an amazing team and like things are running the way that they should. But sometimes it feels a little bit like being on the outside looking in at this point, and you're like not super sure of what your place is and what your role is. And that's something I've had to really figure out in the last year, because just right before the pandemic, John, who was one of my mentors through Venture Asheville, I had a conversation with my mentor team right after holiday 2019. And I was so exhausted. Like I went into that meeting and they could just see it all over me. You know, they were like, Ginger, are you okay? And I just broke down and I was like, I'm so tired. And I'm just, you know, we had been at a stage at that point where we just were like drinking from a fire hose, you know, it was like, you're just trying to keep up and you're working constantly. And then it all comes to an end and you like, I would always get sick, like right December 26th, I would always get sick just from like being so run down. And then, you know, I'd take this vacation with my kids and I would be sick and exhausted and tired. And I was like, finally, after 6 years of that, I was like, something has to give. I don't know what it is, but like, I'm killing myself. So I went into that meeting, and about a week later, John approached me and asked me if him coming on as a temporary CEO for 6 months to just kind of give me a break would be something that I would want to do. And I think he barely got the sentence out of his mouth. And I was like, yes, like, where do I sign? Like, can you start in an hour? And so that's what happened. And that was, you know, over a year ago, and John's still here. His temporary CEO has kind of evolved into full CEO. And I've just realized during that time that, you know, I really needed to not work in the same way that I was for my own mental health and my own physical health. And I didn't want my team working that way either. I was trying to make a good life for all of us, and I was kind of killing us all in the process. So John's been amazing for us. It's given me time that I haven't had in so long, but it's also, you know, put me in a different role than I ever have been. And so that was a big transition for me. And it wasn't something that bothered me or I was upset about. I just had to figure out like, where do I fit into this, and what's my place now that he's here, and how do I work together with him? And it's taken us a good year and a half, but we figured it out. I feel like I'm in a really good place with him, and we have an incredible team, and we work really well together. And, you know, it's like a trade-off. You have to be willing to give up some control to have some quality in your life. And I've just learned that that's worth it to me. And that might not be the case forever, but it's definitely the case right now. You know, I'm at that point in life where I realize in just a few short years, my kids are going to be out of the house and life will look really different than it does now. And I just want as much of that time with them as I can get. So John's really helped me be able to do that.
That's super good. That's super cool. I always say you got to give up control to get control.
Yeah.
Because there's really competent people that can do things a lot better than I can in my businesses. And I just I have to learn to let them do that. And it sounds like that's what you've done as well.
Well, yeah. And it's helped me really, you know, be able to get back to the parts of the business that I really loved in the beginning. You know, like I know what my strong suits are, and I've definitely learned what they're not. And I think part of being successful is like being willing to admit the parts that you're not strong in and having somebody help you with that. And so that's, you know, that's kind of where John comes in. And it's allowed me to have more time to work on, you know, the packaging and marketing and branding and the things that I really am good at and the things that I really enjoy, rather than, you know, spending 90% of my time doing things that I'm not really great at and I don't enjoy just because I'm the person in charge and I have to.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the main reasons to grow a business to a certain size, so you can get back to doing the things that you want to do and enjoy doing, or maybe the reasons you went into business for in the first place, which in your case was family. So
yeah,
it's super, I think it's a great story. It's super.
well,
So is there any last things that you'd like, or advice you'd like to give to budding entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs or anybody in that space, or people who just own businesses? Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest thing I've learned along the way, and now that I've been in business for 7 years and I've gone through the Venture Asheville program, there's definitely like newer businesses through Venture Asheville or other means that reach out to me, and have questions, and I always love answering those questions because that's what people did for me in the beginning. And, I think my biggest piece of advice is like, you have to really, like, whatever your reason is, you have to really feel strongly about it, because along the way, there's going to be everything to come along to tell you why you can't do what you're doing. And, you have to be willing to put in the work. You have to be willing to be open to admitting what you don't know and asking for help. And, I think one of the things I've learned is, I think this is kind of unique. Like, Asheville is a really great town to start a business in because people are so open to helping each other. Like, I've kind of formed this peer group with all kinds of different businesses in town. And it's like, if I have a question or something comes up, especially last year during COVID, like, we really communicated a lot with each other, to be able to call somebody up and be like, what are you doing about this? Like, I don't have any idea how to handle this, or I'd have no idea what to do with this, and just be able to bounce things off of people. But, I think going into it, you're like, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what it's going to be like, and this is what's going to happen. And you kind of have to throw that out the window and be like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, but your road's not going to be like this. It's going to be like this. And, you got to be able to roll with that in a sense, and be willing to do whatever it takes to get to the end point without losing your sanity and your morals and your, your culture and all of those things that are important to you.
Look, this has been great. Thanks for coming on. There's a gazillion lessons in here, I think, for people. And so, yeah, we really just appreciate you being here and sharing your experience.